Now, Takuya Jin is world rank number 119, which is close to his best. His best world ranking was 114. He's the second seed in the tournament. He's 23 years old, so 1 year older than Bob Chen. He beat Gao Ning in the past. He plays for Citizen in Japan, and this is his second time playing at the US Open. So we'll see his control and speed. You remember his after motion on the serve, so impressive. Let's see how the serves are handled, and it seems that we've got the nationalities straightened out here.
And from the previous semifinals, both of them were more experienced. This is more of a youth. And
what's that?
The previous semifinals were, you know, both the opponents were experienced, 32 years old, 36 years old. And here we have both of them,
22 and 23.
22 and 23.
So
yeah,
significantly younger. Yeah, we've got a whole decade less, even more than that if you look at the averages. So first point to Takuya Jin. Perfect placement right into the body. That opening backhand from Takuya Jin, so impressive. I don't know if we saw that a lot yesterday. We saw his forehand. You know, against defenders as well, you're going to see a lot more forehand attacks. Player has time. They're going to use the forehand, the bigger stroke, whenever they can. Heavy topspin, but well placed right back. Bob Chen stays focused and on top of the ball. Not easy to counter that ball and keep it down. And turns to look back at the Japanese delegation. We've got him right in front of us. Again, many top players. It's interesting, as far as the names, Kenji Matsudaira is the biggest name we have here. But Takuya Jin, not too far behind in world rankings. Kenji Matsudaira is number 90 in the world. We got 119, Takuya Jin. It's rare to see someone wipe the sweat on the top of the table at the back edge of the table. Beautiful shot, short side of the table. They're both pinned in the backhand court. A risky ball, and Bob Chen, watch how much he has to turn the upper body, and there he's off balance. That's where he pays for it. Takuya Jin knows when he's got his opponents just a little bit off balance.
So nice to see the energy and the enthusiasm, both the players with fancy gallery game that they're playing. Treat to watch for all these spectators out here.
And that ball clearly goes the other way, but if it hits the net post or the clamp and then comes down onto the table, even if it's just over the table, so the bottom of the net essentially, it still counts as part of the net and can come into play. Very rare occasion, but always exciting when it happens. The pressure to serve so short and still keep topspin on the ball. Obviously, with a lot of topspin, it's especially tough to keep it short. It's going to jump out away from the net, but it doesn't leave Bob Chen a lot of options on the receive.
And we're seeing Takuya Jin's little forehand attacks that we saw from yesterday.
That's right. And finally, he misses one. The first one, he was off balance on one foot. So quick to react. I think this is why he's so fired up right now, just giving himself that energy for every single point. He knows it's going to be a tough one. It was only last year that a player from ICC, a coach from ICC, beat a world-class top 60 player. It was Adrian Krishan against Wang Jinxin. Wang Jinxin winning and then proposing. A super romantic moment.
Beautiful moment that was.
Yeah, Jia Wenting and Wang Jinxin very happy together, both coaching at ICC and here. Both played in this tournament as well. And as clever as that receive is to get it so quickly off the bounce, if it's going to come long, you can see what happens. Takuya Jin right there, deep on the table, just creates too much of an opening for Bob Chen to cover on the wide forehand. Very bold attempt on that leg sweeping short side of the table forehand. Little help off the top of the net. Bob Chen recovers the first one. We talked about the focus and the rhythm, how it really breaks the rhythm when it clips the top of the net.
And that was a bit too ambitious shot. I mean, at 8-3, probably he can afford to attempt it.
We'll see. Seen some big comebacks out here.
Just before this, in this last semifinal.
Now, as far as support goes, as far as feeling like you're playing in front of the home crowd, ICC has so many players at this tournament. You have to imagine that Bob Chen has more fans in the crowd, more supporters. But the Japanese contingent here, so many players from Japan. I mean, if it weren't for Adriana Diaz, semifinal could have been an all Japanese battle.
Yeah, and in the women's singles, we had, out of 8, we had 6 players from Japan.
That's right. So now we're starting to get to see the power of Bob Chen from off the table. Takuya is going to have to keep on the pressure. Anything in between, and Bob Chen's too strong from off the table. Much better receive. Takuya Jin keeps it over the table, doesn't allow Bob Chen to get the opening attack. The serve yesterday that was so effective with the after motion, we don't see it quite as much being a problem out here. Bob Chen has received most of those serves, but still the third ball attack. And that's really the job of a serve, to set up your third ball attack. Somebody can't shut that down with their receive, then you keep sticking to that serve. Oh, a merciless attempt, and that's the most frustration I've seen in game one. It's not like he had a huge lead or anything. He started a big comeback. You know, made several points in a row to get it back to 6-8, but still, that's a pretty frustrated Bob Chen.
Yeah, and I see a new Jin Takuya in this game. He's thumping more when he's serving and then getting a nice third ball attack, finishing off really well. And those, you know, doing that wiggle after he serves, he makes that contact, is really helping him, or what do you think is not?
Well, what do I think is helping him? Or?
Yeah, the wiggle that he does after his serve.
In general, I do think that is effective. Takuya Jin there, by the way, 2014 U.S. Open champion in the corner for Bob Chen. But yeah, the after motion, it really depends on who's on the other side of the table. I think if you have someone who's going to be bothered by it and confused by it, you keep doing it. Otherwise, you know, whatever works. And for Takuya Jin, he's getting the third balls he wants without too much after motion. So yeah, it seems to be working. As we start game two, we'll see what happens here. Takuya Jin in the lead, 11-6 in game one over Bob Chen. We'll see if the frustration comes back into play to help out Bob Chen.
For all those watching live here, we are also live on Facebook. Do send in your comments and questions if you have for us.
Look at this point. The counter spins from all over the court running down. We've got fans on their feet here in the crowd, and it all starts with an opening backhand. Bob Chen on the run, so comfortable. Still covers the middle there. And way out wide, deep in the backhand court. Again, it's Takuya Jin who takes advantage and takes the point. Hey. Very difficult ball right at the back edge of the table. Talked about how the ball bites. A little bit of backspin goes a long way to keep the ball closer to the net. It's funny that it looked to me like it was going to be a clear opening for Bob Chen. Like the push was too long, but it stayed close enough to the back. Oh, Burned goes for full commitment, and the short side of the table's there, but nobody's home to cover the forehand. This is a risk you have to take sometimes until Bob Chen consistently proves that he can do that, but he anticipates well, just sticks the racket out and blocks it back.
Looked as if he just knew right there the ball is going to be there. Amazing.
And now you're starting to see some hesitation. And this is something as far as quickly learning from the past. Takuya Jin gets punished for stepping around and playing the short side of the table, so he tries to go safer and spin it to the forehand. But it seemed like, or not the forehand, the backhand rather, the length of the table, but it seemed a little uncomfortable for him, like he was forcing himself to change and not take the shot he wanted. Big serve deep on the table with topspin. Again, the occasional fast, long serve. If you're going to serve long, it needs to be intentional, needs to be right near the baseline, and just use sparingly enough, but it also has to be something that's delivered with quite the same delivery as all your half-long serves.
So that the opponent does not know beforehand that you're going to do a long serve.
That's right.
Now, Adam, this backhand opening from the forehand side is
The
so
Chiquita.
common. Yeah, that is coming. We see more and more of the men, and now even the women have started playing that.
Yeah, there are a few. Du Hoi Kem does, even Chung Yi-ching. Oh, and this time it's the other way around. An 80% shot comes from Takuya Jin, and Bob Chen has the opening to the short side of the table. Look at the serve right in near the body. And the pressure early on from Bob Chen. So I think that was not the last point that we just saw there. We were reviewing another point in the match.
That was certain uncomfortable backhand from Bob Chen.
Right, and just in case, since you brought up the banana flip, the Chiquita, where you come in and take the backhand over the forehand side of the table, just generates more spin. You get more wrist involved from over the table.
And it's nice to see more and more new techniques evolving as the game grows and grows. Makes it more exciting and more challenging for everyone to adapt.
And this is something, obviously, China excelling here, sort of setting the trends. Always looking for new ways to get an advantage, new techniques that can be used to get you into the point faster. Short side again. This is a tough shot on that step around. Hope we get to see that one in replay, but Bob Chen's so fast.
It's so nice to see how he has evolved from the last game. He's learned from his mistakes. He's definitely more controlled and getting those forehand drives on the table.
Ooh, look at this. The ball didn't sit very high, but he goes for the angle and punches it like it was a free shot. It's a risky play, but a very perfectly executed shot. Still keeps the topspin on it. Almost looked flat because it was so snappy, but in that slow-mo replay, you can still see comes over the top of the ball. That little bit of topspin is very necessary to make sure the shot comes down a little onto the table. Smart play. So this is breaking the pattern, right? We see Takuya Jin starting to move to cover the forehand side because Bob Chen has done it several times already this game. Bob Chen notices that with the peripheral vision, hits it inside out the opposite way. Perfect placement again right at the back of the table. It's going to be a difficult opening. Bob Chen is using his backhand well to open up.
And for Takuya Jin, his serves are really making a difference.
Right, we talked about how the first two shots of every rally are the most important shots in any rally. Really set the tone. Ooh, clever attempt. Tough to tell the spin on that. It floated like there was a bit of underspin on it. Typically on a long serve, just to make it faster, you're more likely to see topspin.
And it's kind of near the net and shorter, so probably makes it harder for the opponent to attempt it.
For the third ball, that is? Mm-hmm. Right. Perfectly into the body again. When the ball sits up a little bit, that's the way to do it.
This is the third time he applied the same strategy and it seems to be working really well.
There was a light on the camera. Assistant umpire calling to make sure that the players aren't distracted. Of course, it's Takuya Jin who would be more likely to be distracted on that side of the table. Rare we see that called, but that is good looking out for the players. Sort of curious what the call was when they stopped the point. Once again, that after motion from in near the body, and not as much topspin as Bob Chen thought. The side swiping receive finds the net. It's 3 game points for Takuya Jin. Chance to take a 2-0 lead here. Oh, look at this shot right off the bounce after the backhand opening down the line. So fast to squat and make that topspin loop. Look at it one more time. That's a finisher. His feet weren't even set. He was still backing up to make it. The right leg moving out of the way.
Great anticipation by Bob Chen. Felt like as if he just knew that he was just standing right there to attempt that shot.
And players asked to come back to the table now. The towel break has reached its max. The umpires want to make sure they're playing quickly. Bob Chen saves another game point. 2 game points saved in a row. Pressure starting to build for Takuya Jin. Keeping the hand dry here. It's Bob Chen in the driver's seat with the serve against game point. Strong movement and soft touch. It's so difficult to play the ball short enough when you're late to get there. Bob Chen, I thought for sure would pop that ball up, but impressively rather, touches it and it comes just off the back edge. 3 game points saved in a row, and here we are at deuce in game 2. Uncomfortable ball from over the table. Tries to flip it, doesn't get much spin on it.
To me, that serve, that thump is just so loud.
Oh, the stomp on the serve.
Oh my God, wow.
Well, imagine if the flooring were different. I mean, a lot of practices, depending on where you are, there's sort of a gym floor type feel. And it really makes a loud sound. Actually, on the World Tour for ITTF, when they stomp that hard, it really makes a loud thump. So much power. Look at this fight from Takuya Jin off the table. Chases it down. What does Bob Chen have to do? I think he's going to have to do more than block and punch. That's for sure. He's going to have to open up, really get in the point early, but it's not easy. Takuya Jin's fire and all his serves, the placement and the spin. How much power he gets here, and the placement's always changing. Place it to the short side there to win. So much closer game than the first. You can see the scores. Bob Chen tested. Or I guess Takuya Jin tested by Bob Chen. If the pattern continues, Bob Chen would take game 3, but still not a game for him yet.
So we're also live here on Facebook, and we'll be answering some of your questions. Jeffrey Sander asks, will that young girl be coming back?
Well, if that young girl he's talking about is Adriana Diaz, which I'm pretty sure he is, the answer is yes, she will. I mean, we really can't know the future, but she's earned herself a spot in the women's singles semifinals, so I think the crowd, the stadium should be packed here. Even right now, it's tough to find a seat. You know, we've got 3/4 seating, and then we've got standing room in front of the flags where the cameras are, and people are standing all around the court. So there's an open seat or two. It looked like somebody was saving. Now in the corner, by the way, for Takuya Jin, the coach is Kazuhiro Kudo. And it's the coach for the Citizen team, which is the company team that Takuya Jin plays for. Both in Korea and in Japan, they have company leagues, which is quite cool. I'd love to see more of that, something like that in the United States. We'll see. Keep sending in those questions. Any other good ones here?
We have a comment from George Taplin. He says, Jin is not pulling his left arm in on the serve, and it is technically illegal.
Well, that's definitely a judgment call as far as opinions go. I think, for me, until we get cameras that show the ball being blocked, even there, it's sort of difficult to tell, a little questionable. The ball needs to be visible from the time it's considered live. Once it's presented on the flat hand, until the point it's contacted on the serve, it needs to be visible. So as long as the arm isn't blocking or obstructing the vision of the receiver, then it's technically legal. Tough to tell from the camera angle and definitely from where the umpire sits.
Mohammad Zain Ansari asks, who is favorite to win this game?
Well, at this point, I would say Takuya Jin leading 2-0. You know, by seeding, definitely. By ratings in the U.S., Bob Chen has the higher rating at 27-26. It's Takuya Jin who's rated 26-21, but you know, when you're an overseas player, it's only your second time playing. The ratings tend to be more accurate for players who are playing a lot, right? A larger sample pool, like Bob Chen. So, yeah, coming into this, I would say Takuya Jin is the favorite. Look at this, a little bit of side spin. He's so active in the backcourt, no problem running around and hooking the ball back. Look at the side spin that he puts on. Steps around, leaves open the block down the line. Now, something clever that might not seem obvious to everybody, when someone loops to step around the backhand corner and get their forehand in, block it right back to that backhand corner. Because the natural reaction is for them to move out to the forehand to cover the opening. So you're going to hit it behind their momentum, behind their body weight, and it's a much safer block for you as the blocker because you have the length of the table. There's more forgiveness there. You can hit it a little harder if you want. I've seen it work many times very effectively, and also just breaking the patterns. Once someone starts to do that and you realize that, that's when you block it back down the line.
Bob Chen definitely, if he's listening to us, should try to adopt that.
Seems unlikely at this point. Don't see any earpieces in there, and you and I are keeping a respectful volume, I think. Well, you anyway. You're very respectful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This one goes a little bit loose. Long push into the backhand side. So Bob Chen in the lead here. Look at this. We've seen 2 7-gamers in a row from that, what do you say, that little girl? That young girl, Adriana Diaz, 16-year-old. 11-9 in the 7th to Ho Ying Chao. Just before an amazing match with Ho Ying Chao. But it was Wei Wong who won. Bit heavier on the push. There's so many different ways to get points in table tennis. It's one of the things that makes it so exciting is how creative you can be. But Bob Chen really loading it on the push there. A little bit of extra, well, a lot of underspin. It just forces Takuya Jin to have to lift and also makes the ball come in over the table a little more. Very active play, I'd say. Aggressive early on in the point. Bob Chen in the receive game getting strong. Right idea. I think that's a wise decision. He has the opening, goes for the spin shot, just doesn't quite read the amount of spin on the ball.
Takuya Jin he has all these things, like he's stamping hard to make that thumb. Now in the receiving, you know, it was hard, hit hard on the table to make that sound. Does it really affect the opponent? It, you know, changes it psychologically.
Yeah, well, the stomp, a lot of people ask, what is the point of the stomp? You even see it sometimes on pushes in near the table. Someone stomps the foot. It does sort of mask the sound of the contact, and the sound is relatively important. I'd say quite important, you know, in table tennis, because you know how the ball is contacted. If it's a very faint, you know, high-pitched sound versus the crack of the open racket, it's one big indicator of how much spin is on the ball. Oh, it looked like he thought it was going wider to the forehand. We have to give Bob Chen credit for an intentional shot, just a little bit more central. Watch some flexibility here. Look how low he gets, comes across the body. But then as he's trying to recover, finds it just a little bit in on the elbow. So Bob Chen hangs on to the 2-point lead, gets it back. Such a strong, fast serve. Comes back. He took all the pace off it. Takuya Jin slowed it way down. Looked like it didn't come off as far as Bob Chen would have expected and did expect.
Yeah, he probably was expecting for the serve to go faster, but Takuya Jin, credit to him, he was ready for that serve probably.
Oh. Unbelievable, just missing the corner. What a point, falling to the ground. The most theatrical display of athleticism we've seen yet, and we've seen a lot from Jin. Look at this, Takuya Jin all over the court, crosses the body again on one foot, Look at this, almost a breakdance move as he falls to the ground back on one hand, but it's Bob Chen again with the 2-point lead. Heavy side spin on the serve carries Bob Chen's receive long. Now I mentioned that the table has good grip as well. There's a lot of kick, but the balls, they're introducing new balls. They're very high quality. They're the Nitaku Premium, and they grip very well as well. So there's, I feel like, a very honest sense of how much spin is on the ball, but your spin also goes a long way out here. Power from Bob Chen right off the bounce, staying in near the table. Now, he said that he loves to fish when I talked to him earlier today. Now, I'm not sure how clear the communication was, but I think he knows at this level that he's going to be much more effective in near the table, and we've seen it as demonstrated in that last point. Now he's got 2 serves and a chance, if he takes them both, to get his first game this match. Beautiful play. The reverse pendulum opens up the cross-court forehand, and 3 game points to Bob Chen.
A really clever side spin on his top spin, wide onto Takuya Jin's forehand.
Similar serve and a spinny follow-up backhand for the 3rd ball. Bob Chen with his first game this match. The crowd loves it. They want to see this go to the 7th game for sure. We've still got a long ways to go, but game 3 goes to Bob Chen.
And you never know who's going to take it. We were discussing who's the favorite to win this game. Jin Takuya leading 2 games, but Bob Chen really making a comeback now, winning 1 game. That's the 3rd one to make it 2-1. It'll be interesting to see this one. Will be a crucial game for both the opponents.
Yeah, and it's very exciting for me to see that Bob Chen is playing so aggressively and hitting it right on the body. Takuya Jin, you know, this is knowing the middle. It's sort of like a strike zone in baseball. It's different for everybody. You couldn't paint it in the air. It's based on how they stand, and the same in table tennis. The middle of somebody, you look at a tall player like Vladimir Samsonov, he covers the middle so well with his backhand, he moves it all the way out to even what many would use their forehand on, especially Takuya Jin. Takuya Jin is so fast to step around that his middle, Bob Chen is going to have to play it a little bit more to the backhand side to get him off balance and earn a big forehand shot.
And what we also noticed in the 2nd game, Takuya Jin had a huge advantage over his serves, which Bob Chen kind of overcame in this game to give better receivings, and thus you see the difference.
Absolutely. The receiving game of Bob Chen is probably one of the most crucial factors to get him in the point early. And here he is now. You'll get to see his receive. Smart play with the long push, but Takuya Jin just fighting so hard to keep the pressure on, even when he's off the table.
We're also live here on Facebook, and we have 2 questions. Ben Johnson asks, who is in the other semifinal?
Well, for the men's singles, it was Wang Wei and Ho Ying Chao. But Ho Ying Chao was eliminated, and Wang Wei moves on to the men's singles final. If that's Ben Johnson, who used to play in England and moved to Los Angeles, he's got quite a backhand as well. Big hello to Ben Johnson.
Hello. Jonathan Toyko Jezzy Man, I'm sorry if I pronounce the name wrong, is asking, Jin is 23?
I'm sorry, we just have to acknowledge such an incredible point on that forehand. Side spin kicking deep. Outstanding play. But yeah, as you were saying, Neha.
We had a question. Is Jin 23 years old?
Then he is. Takuya Jin is 23 years old. For 23 years, he has been alive. It was 23 years ago that he was born. A lot of different ways, but yes, 23. Clever attempt, Bob Chen. It looked like he decided just a little bit late. Now this is, again, it's not so much anticipation. It's partially anticipation, but also recognizing, just taking the little hints early, the little clues, like the first bounce of the serve, recognizing if it's going to come long. Bob Chen decided just a little bit later that he wanted to go for the attack, to punch out to the forehand side.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different ways how you can anticipate how the serve is going to come, like either through the contact, either through the first bounce. It's just what you prefer.
Now let's look at this one more time. The placement on that opening from Bob Chen, but Takuya Jin is so fast. He was pumped up. You can see him firing off still, just vocalizing and expressing his excitement to win the point. I mean, that's, again, moving the middle as far into the body as that was. Takuya Jin still got a forehand attack back. And the physicality, even with the Chiquita from the forehand side, using that banana flip. Bob Chen right there in a central place to counter with the forehand for the winner.
Now, if we see the difference between both the players in terms of their attitude over the table, Takuya Jin is more of this aggressive and vocal with all the fist pumps. But Bob Chen is more of the subtle and, you know, regaining his calm and composure, not emoting too much.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I'm trying to think of the Japanese men as far as, you know, traditions and personalities that we see. Of course, they're different from person to person. We mentioned Tomokazu Harimoto at 13 years old being the junior world champion, one of the most fiery players on the world tour. But Takuya Jin definitely plays with a lot of heart and a lot of passion. Bob Chen keeps it a little bit more in terms of vocalizing. Look at this. Clever play this time, like a walk in the park. Just rolls it back. Some topspin out to the open side. And this is what happens when you turn too early, right? We talked about how you can't move too early. This is why all that speed and fitness helps you out, so that you can move right at the point of contact or when you feel confident that you know where it's going to go.
Exactly, and this is where you also need to think, is the opponent understanding my strategy or not? Is he going to change or not? So you need to keep all your options open while serving. You cannot predetermine what the opponent is going to do.
Exactly. Recovers the net ball, Bob Chen. I was surprised. He played it soft into the body. Let's see if we see this one more time. This is the shot right there, a little bit softer. Look how much footwork we see from Takuya Jin. Bob Chen holds his positioning well, even with the broken rhythm of the top of the net. So Bob Chen up 3 now with his second serve. Flip kill, my goodness, the power on that. Moves in quickly and just destroys the ball. It's not an easy shot. Gets up on 1 foot for that. Short to the forehand side, too.
This is the first time we're seeing this powerful flip in this whole game. Wow, where were all these hidden shots?
You know, and sometimes it's just, again, credit to the opponent to not really allow it. This is why you don't get to see some of your favorite shots. Change your serve here. All right, uses the backhand to mix it up a bit. Now, as far as deceptive serves, that backhand serve, I feel like it's quite rare to see in the modern game, the way he did it. But it's also a little difficult to read how much backspin is on it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see it again, or at least something from a similar position, the backhand. It looks like we will. Oh, and it's sometimes as tricky as it can be if you don't perform it a lot. You know, I'm sure you felt this before. You're like, yeah, I'm going to try that reverse pendulum serve, even though I don't practice it quite as often. I don't use it as much. Then you serve it away.
But it's like men's singles, semifinals, 2-1. You know, it's a crucial stage, and you don't want to make that big a risk.
Well, at the same time, he was rewarded for it on the point before, so it's understandable that he would feel it might be a good strategy. Sounded like the ball was hit off the edge of the rack and just ripped 11 points to 5, and what a turnaround. Bob Chen, it's exactly how we described. In game 1, loses 11-6, gets 4 more points in the next game, and then continues on. So the momentum is going one way right now. It's going the way of Bob Chen, but we'll see what happens. Takuya Jin, world rank number 119, has a lot of experience and is definitely a fighter.
Great gameplay from both the players, and we were discussing who is the favorite to win, but you never know. Brilliant comeback from Bob Chen. We have some questions here. We're also live on Facebook. Rihanna Ghasedi, will you be streaming the finals tomorrow? If so, what time does it begin?
The answer is yes. The time we haven't been given. We'll probably get that to you later in the broadcast, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's right around 7 p.m., something in there. Either way, We'll keep you posted on that.
Marion Arenas. What is the name of our commentators? Do you guys play table tennis too? What was your highest ranking, if ever?
Well, my name is Adam Bobrow, and I am a table tennis player. I actually competed here at the U.S. Open. I've been playing for US ATT tournaments for 20 years, internationally for about 10. As far as highest rankings, you know, I don't think anything's super impressive. I don't know. I'd have to think about what the most impressive stat there. How about you, Neha?
Well, my name is Neha, and I was on the Indian Olympic team. My highest ranking was 18, actually, in under 18 back in 2008. So that was my biggest accomplishment.
I guess for those who know the US ATT ratings, it's tough. You know, my highest rating was just over 2,200, but then I found out they made an error, and I think it was like 2196 or something. So usually right around 2,100. Been there for about 10 years.
Nice. I had the opportunity to play in the US this year, and my highest rating went to 2365.
Right. Neha used to represent India on the national team, so as a player has been quite strong. And even in the collegiate play, again, semifinalist last year at the NCTTA Collegiate National Championships. But either way, back here we're 2-2, game 5. Whoever wins this is going to have a strong advantage.
We're back with those after motion in his service from Takuya Jin.
That's his first point this game. He's very fired up here. I think he needs to be. It's been working well for him, but it's been a while since he's won a game. Wow. We talked yesterday about the flooring. We saw Kenji Matsudaira slipping on a few occasions and even falling to the ground. Been winning a point from the ground, the chop. But here, that fast long serve, Bob Chen has a clever idea to bring it back to the forehand, and it leaves shoe marks, skid marks on the side of Takuya Jin. Look at this. A good 3 just full body clinches there with the fist pump and everything else. Looks back to his teammates. You know, this is where we talked about, remember, the block going back to the backhand corner instead of trying to play the line. If it's a fast, long serve, the same can be said. At least you have a long shot. Well placed to the middle of the table. But yeah, that fast serve, the faster the ball comes in, the less you need to do on it. You know, much like in baseball, a fastball over the middle of the plate, your swing doesn't have to be as hard because there's a lot of power coming in already. It's naturally going to bounce off fast. So a fast, long serve, you don't have the time to react as much. Short stroke, back into the backhand corner.
That's what the top players usually do. Use the speed and the spin from the opponent's ball and just show it back on the table.
This is where Bob Chen has been so effective in the last 2 games, right in over the table. And again, it all comes down to the receive game, shutting down the third ball attack. If he can keep it short and earn himself a 4th ball right at the back of the table, his percentages have been outstanding there. Since the beginning of the match, it was tough for me to remember the last time we saw a big backhand from Takuya Jin.
And as we said earlier, where were all these hidden shots? It's so nice to see both the players being so versatile, you know, with those big flips and the big backhands. And we've seen all this while the big forehands for sure.
Right, well, the game is evolving, so will the tactics of the players. A lot of tricks up their sleeves. Well-placed, low spinny ball from the back of the table. Now, all the top players have this shot when they know the ball's coming just off the back of the table, and they're still able to brush the ball with the faintest of contact, but keep it low to the net, keep it deep on the table. That backhand once again, spinny backhand to the center of the table. Now against a chopper, if you use the backhand, sometimes the trajectory is changed, the spin is more. In that replay, you could see it was very spinny, a little bit slower shot, and it left it out in front of Bob Chen. So while side to side you want to be in the right position, you want to be at the right distance from the table as well. If you play the ball from out in front too much, it can be really uncomfortable. You might be off balance. So dead even here, points in games. Right into that elbow.
So nice to see, even though Takuya Jin is from Japan, he's got this great support, all his Japanese supporters here. Bob Chen from the US, huge crowd here cheering for him as well. So both the players have the support system for them
Right,
in
and
this men's singles semifinals.
That's right. Bob Chen is relatively new to the United States, so I think he's still growing a home base here. Obviously, ICC is very much behind him. I think some of the other American fans here, ooh, starting to like him, and it's shots like that that helps build your fan club. A quick turn to take it off the bounce and play the short side of the table after going deep to the backhand corner. Look how low that ball is when he takes it. Confident play, and he's got Takuya Jin on his feet in the corner. The ICC family is quite strong. So many coaches. I mean, you've got the last 2 years, U.S. Open champions between Takuya Jin and Wang Jinxin. And even the national champions between Lily Zhang and, I guess in the past, Tim Wong. The power. So you should see Neha's face. She's looking at me like, what? How do they do that?
Unbelievable. A powerful backhand and two powerful forehand topspins from Jin Takuya. Oh my God, ripping it apart.
As strong as the blocking game is of Bob Chen, if he can't come back in, take it right off the bounce, he's going to have to risk stepping around for the counter forehands. The short game. It's not one of the more fun things to practice, but it's so rewarding. Really. I mean, I have friends that you look at them and their game is not the biggest, they don't have the huge loops, but their touch over the table is so strong. This is interesting. Timeout by Takuya Jin.
Oh, probably he really wants to get this game in his hand, and it's a good time when he has a serve, so probably he wants some time to plan his serves, both the points better.
Am I remembering it wrong, or did he just win the last point? It just seems unusual. It felt like he won. Maybe I was thinking of the point before, but I thought he won the last point.
Yeah, but he's leading 8-6 with a serve in his hand. Interesting to have a timeout at this point.
Yeah, it's very rare after winning a point to call a timeout. It's sort of like that whole, so let's say someone wins game 1 11-1 and the coach says, you know what, you have to change everything. Why? No, they just say, more of the same. Don't let up. Don't play soft. Keep going. Do it again. Tactically, let's see. This gives a timeout now. Of course, the timeout is for both players. Whoever calls it has the right to end the timeout. Has up to 1 minute or whenever they choose to come back to the table. In this case, Bob Chen would have to come back to the table when Takuya Jin is done with his timeout.
I'm so curious to see this timeout works on whose favor.
Right. That is an interesting thing to consider. I mean, of course, when you call a timeout, having your serve, it's to your advantage because you know what you're going to do to start the point. That's why you would less likely call the timeout when you're on the receive unless it was necessary, which sometimes it is. But yeah, it's also a timeout for the opponent. So Takuya Jin, see if we get some new serves. There's some other tricks up the sleeve. Oh, a high toss and the pendulum, the contact with heavy under.
Now we know why that timeout was called on. 2-2 and leading 9-6.
I wonder. I mean, maybe. Who knows how much they discussed. Service-wise has to be the main part of the conversation. Let's see what he comes up here. You have time to discuss both service sequences. Ooh, placement, a solid flip deep into the backhand. Bob Chen waits patiently, sees it well, and still plays the pressure. And the placement is just right to take the point. Takuya Jin looking for the forehand attack, couldn't find it. Wow, it looked like Bob Chen was in such a good position with that opening attack. Takuya Jin, while backing off the table, still, let's look at this one more time. Or just a still shot of the reverse pendulum anyway. Cool
and
moment.
I thought he's actually going to do a forehand block, and suddenly he made the top spin.
Right, backs off and counters. 3 game points for Takuya Jin. And the first game since game 2 steps into the lead for a 3-2 lead. breaking momentum of Bob Chen. Very curious to see where this goes, Neha.
And if I get a chance, I would love to interview Takuya Jin's coach and ask him what they were discussing during the timeout, because it was a serve which made a difference. And did they change something? What were they discussing? It was so interesting to know.
Right, the details, and this is the fortunate thing about speaking the same language. Takuya Jin speaks relatively good English, I would say, so we could probably ask him that after. If you have a chance between games, if you want, while I get started on the next match. We still have a few games to go here, but yeah, I'm sort of curious as well. Sometimes you hear whenever you ask, hey, what's in that notebook, Aichan? Hey, Mima Ito, what's in your notebook? You end up getting interesting, sort of vague answers back, and it could be a language barrier, but you have to imagine between mantras or what it is to focus on, just reminders that help you really settle in. But how specific do they get? How much is about their opponent's game? I mean, I talked to Stefan Fett, the coach for, Kanak Ja, and he said he was up all night watching Bob Chen's matches last night. It is very important to study. On the World Tour, you will see, actually Japan does this as well, but a lot of teams set up cameras to watch their opponents play and then study them. Now we got a question here that might be a simple one. Shiv Kumar Jha says, how many timeouts allowed in such matches? Each side is allowed one timeout, up to 1 minute if they need, but only one timeout per side. Change of pace, Takuya Jin spinning the ball, adding some real kick to it. So as far as, we got another question here from Lauren Lay. Are there any Chinese national team members in Vegas? Well, we have former ones. Ho Ying Chow is here, but just got eliminated from the tournament. Any provincial players coaching at ICC? Curious who's been on the national team. Zhou Xin was on the national team, but I think he's just coaching here, not competing.
But we see a lot of players from Chinese origin, though, here in the U.S.
Absolutely. Well, the competition, I mean, you get to the age of anywhere between 18 to 22 and you realize, hey, I'm a national team player, but I'm maybe the number 15 player on the team. I'm going to move somewhere else.
And China has just so many
players who can do that. Players like Bob Chen who can turn on a ball. Let's look at this one more time. Third ball, it's the backhand that opens up, and he comes across the body with that forehand down the line. Quick decisions. Bob Chen needs to take this game. He's down 2-3 in games. It's his first point of the game. It's his first serve, too. Has the opportunity again, manages to get the first big shot back.
And that grunting is getting louder and louder from Takuya Jin.
Takuya Jin, you could see in the replay, came across the body as well. This is one way to cover the middle. Again, knowing the technique, but knowing how to still make the ball without the technique when you need to, under pressure. This is why playing matches is so important. Practice is quite a different situation.
Yeah, and this tournament here offers so many matches to play.
Just an outstanding shot. The reaction time of Bob Chen once again. He's still backing off the table, but manages to close, keeping the racket head up. Otherwise, you don't have time to really contact the ball. Making sure the sweat is off the hand. I've seen it before playing in, competing in Vietnam. I try to do that every year at the Vietnam Open. Sometimes the racket slips out of the hand when you're playing in the south because it's so humid. Anywhere there's humidity, even though we're in the desert, if you're sweating hard, you want to make sure the hand has a good grip on the racket.
And how often have you seen players wiping off their sweat? I mean, if a guess, like a percentage of players who do that?
Well, on the table, I mean, you could probably see it out here, I don't know, every 3 points or less. It just happened again. You could hear the sound again. So, I mean, almost every point, whatever's necessary. Like if you're playing on one of the outside courts, you wet your feet to make sure they have traction if you need to every point. Same with the sweat on the palm of the hand. Perfect shot right down the middle of the table with the backhand. Has to come in to get it while it's high.
Back to the sweat on the palm of the hand thing. It has that connection with the mind and how nervous you're feeling. The more nervous you are, the more sweaty you get, because that's the place where your body really first starts feeling it.
Oh my goodness, what an incredible point right off the bounce. We've got people standing up in the crowd. Bob Chen going for broke here from off the table. A few big loops, the jumping lob comes back, hooking forehand to take it right off the bounce. To even block that ball back on the table takes such a great understanding of the kick, and Bob Chen counter loops it off the bounce. And that ties it up here, 4 points each in game 6. Backhand to backhand, Bob Chen stronger in this point. Still pretty fast shots, but nothing to kill the ball. We saw Adriana Diaz doing this a lot, and then every once in a while would just rip the ball. By the way, I want to adjust the hand sweat thing. I would like to say every point on average now. It seems to be almost every point that both players are drying off the hand. Lead service. And when you were mentioning the hand wiping, I was actually thinking what you were going for, and is another interesting side point, but sometimes for players it's like almost a ritual that gets them in a rhythm, They feel like they've done what they need to do. You'll see players bounce the ball on the table before the serve sometimes.
And speaking of rituals, we also have a lot of superstitions that players follow.
I'm curious to hear more about those. Any superstitions that you play with, Neha?
Well, not many I had, but I always used to pray before the match. I'm a very religious person, so I made sure I always prayed. It was not a superstition, but kind of brings in more belief that,
Okay. Draw the line where you will. Speaking of lines, a down the line forehand on the step around from Bob Chen. And he takes the lead. Crowd getting into it. It's nice to see such a packed arena here again. You've got fans on both sides. Oh, back edge of the table.
Don't
Seemed
see that
like it
more
anyway.
often. Yeah, it was a good backhand attack.
Normally we see an apology. 2 times you see apologies typically in table tennis. When you clip the net and it wins you the point, sets you up to win the point anyway. Or if it catches the edge of the table in the same. Tough to tell, just sounded like maybe the back edge. Talk about footwork. Takuya Jin moving all over the he's just like a ghost out there flying around, crosses the body. Look how deep into the backhand court he is before he gets this one back. Bob Chen plays one more, and a hooking forehand once again doesn't bother Bob Chen.
Crowd going bizarre with this amazing display of table tennis out here.
Oh, a break off the top of the net. Bob Chen looking to make it into game 7 here, starting his campaign. I guess he's been fighting since first point of the match, but it wasn't until game 3 that he got his first game. But again, the finish line, the last point of the game point is always the toughest point. I don't know if I was telling you the other day, but they say that tightrope walkers die most commonly. They fall in the last 3 steps of their walk. They think they've crossed it already. They think they've done the job, and that's when they lose the focus. We see this in table tennis so much. Someone gets a 9-5 lead. Suddenly they soften up just a little bit. Next thing you know, it's a 1-point game. But Bob Chen seems to keep his focus here. He's earned 4 game points to send us to a deciding game 7. It would be our 3rd 7-gamer in a row, Neha.
Wow, this is getting as exciting as it can get.
What a receive, top of the net, but Bob Chen quick to react. 11-6, the most dominant game Well, since game 4 anyway, Bob Chen won that one 11-5, but we are going to game 7. And look at the momentum here. It's been back and forth throughout. We can never really predict what's going to happen, Neha.
I agree, and we are also live here on Facebook. Keep sending us your comments and questions. We have one from Marion Arenas. Love the tightrope walker analogy.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan of that. I think it's a very interesting thing that sort of makes it clear and applies to many elements in life too. You know, you think you already have something. It's like counting, don't count your chickens before they've hatched. I might be butchering the wording on that, but it's essentially the meaning is the same.
Yeah, and table tennis, it's such a short game. I mean, 11 points. You just can never, underestimate or estimate your opponent or be sure that this is it.
Right. I think I've seen some really, earlier this year, I think it was Kuwait, where Xu Xin came back against Junmi Zutani. Junmi Zutani would have been the biggest win of his career to beat Xu Xin. I think he was like 0-9 out of 9 attempts, had never beaten Xu Xin, something like that, and had 10-4 in game 7, lost 8 straight points. Waldner against Ma Lin, 10-5. His 5 match points, loses 7 in a row. If I remember correctly, he might have even given 2 serves, but nonetheless, we're right here at a very exciting match. The crowd getting into it as we come into Game 7 to see who will take the place at the men's singles final tomorrow. Is it going to be Bob Chen, or is it going to be Takuya Jin? Softer spinny ball, well placed into the middle. Now this is clever, but also safer. It's a smarter ball to take a little pace off it when you don't have the height. Arc it up. You've got the opponent backing off the table anyway, so play it out in front, play it in on the body. Ooh, we haven't seen service trouble from Takuya Jin. The service quality from Bob Chen is rising under pressure.
And a different Bob Chen here in the 7th game with those fist pumps and the cho and getting the support from the crowd that he wanted.
That ball just comes too long. Well, not long enough to be threatening, but it's out to the forehand. Takuya Jin earns himself a 3rd ball and so much power on that stroke.
To me, it was one of the most deadly attacks. Boom, right on the middle, on the body.
So Takuya Jin with his first point on the serve. We've seen this pattern before, players taking their serves to their advantage. Once again, the server has won the point.
Tied at 2-2 in the final game. Every point is so crucial here in the 7th set.
I'm very curious to see, if you're from ICC, if you're really rooting for United States and you want Bob Chen, or if you're thinking about who they're going to play in the final. Oh, look at the power on the step round. Again, the placement to the middle. But right, Takuya Jin is so exciting to watch. And we've got Wang Wei already waiting in the winner's circle, at least in the final match.
It's going to be an incredible final between a chopper and a full-fledged attacker.
Yeah, I'm quite excited to see it regardless of who it is, but we still got this exciting game right here in front of us. Well-placed, fast, long serve and an inside-out forehand. Bob Chen showing more emotion than we've seen the entire match. And no better time than now here in Game 7. Turns and you could see the quads. Looking to kill Kumar in the back, up on his feet. An ICC player, only 13 years old, took 2nd place in the under 2700s.
Wow, great accomplishment from Nikhil Kumar.
We'll be excited to see he's one of the many hopes that the nation is watching. We're always sort of scouting to see who could really break through into the world top 100 for our men. Takuya Jin fighting, takes it back to just within 1 point. One of my favorite things at sporting events is when the crowd really cares about who wins. And that's so clear here that, there's a pretty split crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. This is Japan versus the United States of America. We have Japanese supporters, we have US supporters. Can get better.
This is the beauty of even a half-long serve that comes off the table. If it's close enough to the back edge, you can see how much trouble I had a similar experience with Tao and Zhang in sort of a funny match, but my serve went a little bit too long, but it was so close to the back of the table. And just once again, the equipment is so good here that the table's going to grip between the ball being good and the table being good. It really grips the ball, and the little bit of bite on it keeps it shorter. As there with the push from Bob Chen, look how fired up both players here. It's going to be a bit of a battle in the sense that they're screaming and fighting. Now we switch sides in the deciding game to make sure that neither player has an advantage by starting off on one side, or having more time rather on either side. So when one player reaches 5 points, in this case it's Bob Chen, they've switched sides and Bob Chen has the momentum and his second serve. Opening backhand from Bob Chen. He's keeping it tight, low to the net. What are you thinking, Neha?
I'm amazed by the shot that was attempted by Takuya Jin. It seemed like it was way too ambitious at this point for him to attempt that. It should have been more safer, I believe.
It's a difficult position to be put in, right? He's got a low spinny ball coming into him. I think he feels that if he plays it too soft, it's just going to be Bob Chen's point anyway, because it's going to come up high. So sometimes you have to be a little fearless. Oh, what a break off the top of the net. A crucial one here in Game 7.
Takuya Jin clearly not happy with this.
Well, this is the way it goes, right? I mean, this is part of the game. Wow, 2 bounces on the net. From this angle, you could see it perfectly. A camera just centered, lined up with the net. Oh, back edge, the luck comes back. Table tennis karma, TTK, quickly delivered, Amazon Prime style out here. We were talking about ambition. As far as it's always like life, a balancing act really, right? The decision to be made, I've seen players that get a little too cautious when it becomes high pressure, and very rarely does playing cautiously pay off at this level. So it's a fine balance of being aggressive, but doing it wisely, keeping the spin on. Placement again, Bob Chen to get this ball back. Takuya Jin hits it so hard on the opening. Let's look at this one more time. Takes it quick off the bounce, but leaves it a little off the table. Well-placed block by Bob Chen. And again, Takuya Jin, as strong as his backhand is, definitely favors the forehand and tries to step around. It's a 3-point lead now for the U.S.'s Bob Chen. Both players in sync there. Let's take a moment here to make sure our hands are dry under pressure. Touch shot. The Japanese fans in the crowd with their hands in the air.
Brilliant soft touch by Takuya Jin.
It's not the first time we've seen him leave the ball there, just off the back edge of the table, and Bob Chen's had trouble. Understandably so, again, recognizing when the ball's going to come off the table and when not. And by how much room you have. The smallest margins can make the difference in the match. So Takuya Jin, just within 2 points here, has 2 serves on his racket. That's that serve, the short top spin. It's side and top, but to keep it short, now it's the timeout on Bob Chen's side. I think this is a good timeout. From 7-4, now it's been 3 points out of the last 4 that have gone to Takuya Jin. So a little conversation between two buddies living in the same house near ICC, the coach's house. Knowing your players, knowing them well. It's always interesting to see how coaches talk to their players too. They're like psychologists really, having to know how to pump up the player, what they need, giving them what they need to play confidently with belief.
I agree, and you need to, at the same time, talk about the strategy, but also pump up the player to give more motivation and just to have them in the right mental frame. We have some questions coming up on Facebook Live. George Tamplin asks, what is the device on the right-hand side just off the edge of the table? Is it a microphone? So
they often have a camera right at the net height. The camera will give some very neat perspective to see how the ball's traveling, what it looks like in real time.
We have a very interesting question from Brandon Lawrence. Is it true that coaches can coach in between points now?
So this is a very interesting question. Internationally, as ITTF as of October 1st, 2016, the answer is yes. As long as the ball's not in play, coaches can coach. At this tournament, I'm not sure if that's in effect. I was sort of wondering that. Sometimes I think at local U.S. tournaments, they sort of go by different rules. They don't. That's interesting.
But at the ITTF level, in
It
the
is.
international level, it is approved now.
Superhero power on both sides. They recovered net edge balls here all around the court, counter looping rallies, and it all starts with that inside out forehand flip so fast. Bob Chen so quick to move. Takuya Jin keeping the spin on. Look how low to the net these shots are, but finally Takuya Jin goes for the risk, takes the risk, playing the shorter side of the table into the body and forcing Bob Chen off balance.
3-3, 8-8 in the deciding game. Men's singles semifinals.
This is where you have to be a responsible friend and share the link. Make sure that your friends are watching this with you. You don't want to miss this. Wow, I thought Bob Chen was done after he got in late. The ball stayed so short on him and he had to concede the long push deep into the backhand corner. See it one more time. Let's see if we get to that point of the point. Look how short this ball is. It's deep on the table too. But if you know you can't keep it short, you better go deep. Make sure that at least you have time to react and narrow down the angle opportunities for your opponent. Bob Chen with a second serve and a chance to earn match point. And he does. 10-8 for United States from ICC, Bob Chen. This would really be something, Neha, to take out the second seed in the tournament. Now Bob Chen was down 2-3. And he also started off losing the first two. He was down 0-2, wins 2 games, loses the next, and here he is with 2 match points to earn himself a place in the final. The touch does it. He goes defensive. And look at this. Props to the crowd and his support. The cheeks are out, and for a moment, it's a handshake. Bob Chen will be able to relax, and it's going to take some time. He was fired up, the crowd on their feet, and even the Japanese fans showing respect for an outstanding match. Everybody from Japan, including Kenji Matsudaira, on their feet right now. Outstanding match once again. Bob Chen's a big congratulations to Bob Chen. 11-8 in Game 7.